In the small, sleepy town of Ashwood, where everyone knew everyone, life was simple and predictable. But one chilly October evening, the town was thrown into chaos when Professor Harold Whitmore, a retired mathematician known for his brilliant mind, was found dead in his study. The police quickly ruled it as a natural death, but something didn't add up. The professor's niece, Clara Whitmore, was convinced it was murder. She reached out to the only person she thought could solve the mystery, Detective Arthur Lane. Detective Lane was a tall, sharp-eyed man in his late 40s, known for his unorthodox methods and keen intuition. He arrived in Ashwood the next morning, his coat collar turned up against the cold. Clara met him at the train station, her face pale and anxious. "Thank you for coming, Detective," she said, her voice trembling. "I know it sounds strange, but my uncle was working on something important before he died. He told me he had solved a puzzle that no one else could. And now he's gone." Detective Lane nodded thoughtfully. "Let's start at the beginning." The professor's study was a cluttered room filled with books, papers, and strange mathematical diagrams pinned to the walls. The air smelled of old paper and ink. Detective Lane examined the room carefully. The professor's body had been removed, but the scene was untouched. A half-empty cup of tea sat on the desk, and a notebook lay open, filled with equations and cryptic notes. "What was he working on?" Lane asked, flipping through the notebook. Clara sighed. "He was obsessed with an ancient puzzle called the Labyrinth of Numbers. It's a mathematical riddle that's been unsolved for centuries. He believed he had cracked it, but he wouldn't tell me the details. He said it was too dangerous." Lane raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous? How so?" "I don't know," Clara admitted. "But the night before he died, he seemed nervous. He kept looking over his shoulder, as if he was being watched." Detective Lane's eyes narrowed. He noticed something odd on the desk, a small, crumpled piece of paper tucked under the teacup. He unfolded it carefully. It was a note, written in the professor's shaky handwriting. "The key lies in the Fibonacci sequence. Beware the shadow." "Fibonacci sequence?" Lane muttered. "What does that mean?" Clara shook her head. "I'm not sure, but my uncle often talked about patterns in nature and numbers. Maybe it's a clue." As Lane dug deeper, he discovered that the professor had been corresponding with a mysterious figure known only as the Scholar. The letters were filled with cryptic references to the labyrinth of numbers and warnings about those who seek the treasure. Lane's instincts told him that the professor's death was no accident. Someone had silenced him to keep the puzzle's solution a secret. The detective's investigation led him to the local library, where he found an old book on mathematical riddles. Inside, he discovered a hidden compartment containing a map. The map was marked with strange symbols and numbers, including the Fibonacci sequence. It seemed to point to a location deep in the woods outside Ashwood. That evening, Lane and Clara followed the map into the forest. The air was thick with mist, and the trees loomed like silent sentinels. After hours of searching, they stumbled upon an ancient stone structure hidden among the trees. It was a small circular chamber with a pedestal at its center. On the pedestal was a locked box engraved with the same symbols from the map. Using the Fibonacci sequence as a code, Lane unlocked the box. Inside was a single sheet of parchment. It was the professor's final solution to the labyrinth of numbers, a groundbreaking mathematical discovery that could change the world. But before they could celebrate, a voice echoed from the shadows. "I'll take that," said a tall, hooded figure, stepping into the light. It was the Scholar, the professor's mysterious correspondent. He held a gun, his eyes cold and calculating. "You killed him," Lane said, shielding Clara. The Scholar smirked. "The professor was too clever for his own good. He should have shared the solution with me. Now, hand it over." Thinking quickly, Lane tossed the parchment into the air. As the Scholar lunged for it, Lane tackled him to the ground. A struggle ensued, but with Clara's help, they managed to subdue the man until the police arrived. Back in Ashwood, the mystery was finally solved. The professor's puzzle had led to a discovery worth killing for, but his brilliance had also ensured that the truth would not be buried with him. Detective Lane handed the solution over to the authorities, knowing it would be used for the greater good. As he boarded the train back to the city, Clara thanked him. "You saved my uncle's legacy," she said. Lane smiled. He was the real hero. I just followed the numbers. And with that, the detective disappeared into the mist, leaving behind a town that would never forget the puzzle that had almost cost them everything.